Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Spiritual Times with Philip Solomon. This week, I'm going to talk to you about a subject that's of great interest to me and has become something that I've spent a lot of time teaching people about because I think it's absolutely excellent for developing you spiritually and making you feel better. And it's all to do with what we call psychic art. Now, you might be thinking, what is psychic art? Well, I've got a few notes here that might help you to understand that. I think it will. Artistry, I should say, meaning. Psychic artistry is the practice of using intuition and mediumship to create art. Often you may refer to as spiritualist art or mediumistic art. It would all be the same. A psychic artist serves as a medium sometimes as well. Uses it for channeling images or messages from the spirit world and translating into the physical form in the way of art, a portrait perhaps, or a landscape. I generally paint a lot of landscapes. I do some portraits, but I do a lot of landscapes, and it's great really because it's very relaxing, and you can find that you get into all sorts of things that you didn't perhaps think of that might be good for you. I've got a mention in art in spirituality. I've got a good friend up in Aberdeen in Scotland, Sheila Dougal, and she does this melting wax. And you melt the wax and you let them fall down onto a. You have to be careful with it, obviously, for health and safety, and you be careful with all that. But she melts the wax and the things drop onto the canvas or the card, wherever she's going to do that artwork on. And well, it's really interesting, some of the shapes that come up, and she looks at them, and she's also a medium, Sheila, but you don't have to be a medium to do psychic art, not at all. But then she interprets what she thinks they might mean. And along that line, you might just be inspired to paint something. I often do that. I've brought one along for you to see that I got inspired. I thought I would do a painting. What I hope would be like the spirit of the reggae style, Bob Marley. I'll show it you so as you can perhaps see it. And I painted that, and I felt very inspired to try and paint like the spirit, and it's got the red, well, you can see the red at the top and the yellow, the red, gold, and green. And yeah, I enjoyed that. I felt very inspired by that to do that painting of Bob. I haven't got one of my landscapes to hand, but you can certainly see them on my Facebook page, some of the landscapes that I've painted. And I don't sort of sketch anything out to start with or work like that. I just get stuck into it and do the painting. And you can do the same if you're interested in that, doing that with the melting wax. As she explained it to me, Sheila, you can do it with ordinary crayons as well. I don't know if it comes out so well, but just goes onto the paper or the if you're using whatever you're using on pieces of cardboard, or you might be even using, well, I suppose paper. But I think you need to probably use something a little bit stronger than that, really. I suppose you could use the stuff that artists use, but those can be quite expensive. Well, what we paint on generally, and probably might be better to use something like cord. But there again, if it's something that you're going to do and present it for someone as something to work with, it might well be worth you thinking about using a more traditional art form. They have some great cards that you can buy now, which is obviously a lot cheaper than canvases, and it's very good. I've not painted a lot on card, I'll be honest about it. And I do tend to do nearly all my work, to be honest, on canvas. But I'll tell you a little bit more about this as well. Key concepts of psychic artistry include intuitive guidance. At its core, psychic art is an intuitive process, I believe that as well, that goes beyond rational thought. Artists often describe receiving a spontaneous inspiration and ideas from their subconscious mind, or even a higher metaphysical realm. the spirit from the spirit world, if you want to think of it in that context, inspiring you to paint something. I definitely felt inspired to do that painting of Bob Marley and to use the colours in the background of red, gold, and green. I mean, he was a Rastafarian, wasn't he? And the colours, red, gold, and green, were very much representative of the movement. So I included those colours for the background, and then put the picture in, painted the picture in there of Bob Marley, and I felt quite inspired with all that. Sometimes I just paint buildings or paint trees. I have a feeling that the background you're looking there at today, that might be one that I've painted as well. I like to paint trees and all those sort of things, buildings. Um, I would say I'm generally that inclined towards portraits, though I have done them. But it's not about what I do, it's about inspiring you to think of something. And I think psychic art is something that you could do and you might really enjoy. Um, Mediumship in the context of spiritualism, a psychic artist is also a medium who communicates with entities from the spirit world. They use their clear senses, seeing, uh, clairaudience, any of those things, that you use normally if you're interested in those worlds. You think about it, and I suppose basically you paint while you're doing the work. And I think it's absolutely great. Yeah, I'll just go over that again as well, really. Automatic drawing, I suppose a lot of you have seen that. A key technique used in psychic artistry is automatic drawing, where the artist removes conscious thought and allows their hand to move freely across the paper or canvas. That's a little bit, you've probably read about that sort of thing, and a lot of people, write messages, and they feel that the messages, are guided from an higher spiritual energy. I've seen psychic art of that nature many, many times, and I think maybe that's something all of us can do. You've got to just let your unconscious take over and let your hand go on the canvas or the card and just go ahead and do it, and see what you come up with. Some people are very, very surprised by what they produce with that. Um, yeah, automatic drawing. I think that's something that you might like to look into. Aurographs, a specific type of psychic art. Aurographs are symbolic drawings that represent a person's soul energy, path, and potential. And that's something that you might like to look into. And that's very interesting. Symbolic drawings. These pieces translate spiritual guidance and emotional states in meaningful images and colours and patterns. I'm a great believer in colours. I think colours are very healing as well. But you might find if you start to look, get into sort of psychic art that we're talking about tonight, that you find yourself probably using specific colours, you know. I like a lot of green. I use a lot of green in my landscape paintings, and I always find that comes very strongly. Also yellow, and these may be colours that you feel of that having, healing. Properties for you or for others. I don't just do it, that's the thing to do. Traditional painting, surreal. I always have a job saying this. Surrealist automatism. I've got it out there. I think. I think that's right. Uh, Versus psychic art, if you like, because those people who do. I ain't going to try and say it again, but you can look it up if you want it. Surrealist automation. They say it's all to do with your unconscious, your unconscious. Whereas I suppose if you're thinking of it as psychic artistry, you may well feel that you're influenced from spirit, and that what gets down onto paper, what you want to say and present for yourself or for others. Surrealist automation, I have always have a job saying that, was created method really for exploring the subconscious mind. Art like you might think of someone like Salvador Dali. and Andre Masson, they used it to access dreams and irrational thoughts to create art. It's all very interesting, isn't it? But I would sort of be saying to keep it very simple to start with. And people are saying to me, well, this is all very interesting, Philip, and you showed us that painting that you were inspired to do your last painting. And you were talking about that you're often inspired to paint landscapes. But you may think, well, I can't paint, and I'll never accept that. People will say to me, no, no, I can't paint at all. It's not something that I have any ability in at all, and I can't do it. And I said, don't be ridiculous. Of course you can. Art is, to me, art, you don't have to be able to paint perfect flowers or perfect likenesses of people. If you can do that, if it's a natural gift that you have, then good for you. And that's going to be a big part of your um, psychic artwork. But it doesn't matter what ability. I always think of old Henry Cooper, the boxer, who used to speak about that aftershave. Splash it on all over. Splash it on all over. He used to say, Disney, what was it called? I'd better not say because of advertising, but I think it was a man's aftershave. I do remember it really, but we don't want to get into any copyright difficulties or anything. But I do like what he said. And it's the same with psychic art. Splash it on all over if you want to. Try, if you have the ability to paint nice landscapes or portraits or trees, by all means paint those, and that's good. And if you do feel that you have some sketching ability and you want to sketch out on the canvas or the card or whatever you've chose to use, what you hope the final thing will look something like when you paint it, that's fine. But I'm going to say to you, you don't need any of those things. I've taken many people in workshops for psychic art, and the first thing you have to convince people is art is for everyone. You don't have to be a Van Gogh or Henry Constable. Those are people of immense artistic ability, but they may well have used their inner energies. I'm sure they probably would. But all you need to do really, if you want to start off by doing some psychic art, is I do really like oils. And what we used to do when I took workshops with people, we'd get them a small set of oil paints, and you don't need a filbert brush is a good brush to start painting with if you want to take an out of that, a filbert brush, and then a little set. Pardon me, I'll just have a drink. A little set of sort of brushes that you like. One brush that you might like to add alongside that filbert brush is what we call a fan brush. And if you can get a little set of those, little set of fan brushes. But as I say, going back to the workshop, we'd get you a small set of oil paintings, generally a filbert brush, so a little pack of small brushes, and a couple of fan brushes. And what we used to do, we'd get everybody into as quieter areas they could. Having said that, some people like to sit right by each other and talk to one another while they're working. And maybe that would be good for psychic art because you're bringing in help. We all, when we go to a spiritualist meeting or something like that, or see a demonstration of various spiritual or psychic arts, it's all there, isn't it? It's something that we're aware of, and we know that we've been inspired. I think it's something that's there and happens. But as I say, we get that little set. That's the only problem with that. Oil paints are quite expensive. If you feel as though you want to do this yourself, you can get what we call acrylic paints. They're okay acrylic paints. Personally, I think oil paints are better for psychic art. And I'll tell you why. I think oils blend very naturally. You don't really get, well, you can paint, very specific straight lines, different lines. Of course you can with oils. But also if you blend in your colours, maybe you're doing a landscape. When I paint a landscape, I do a lot of blending work. I'll start off usually with, a sort of white or sometimes a black basic colour. Um, you can buy specific oil paint to do that, but something like simple, you know, I've mentioned acrylic paint. If you get a tube of white acrylic paint and paint all over your board before you start. That will give you a good thing to work with. But the reason oil paint would be better is you can, it blends. I've explained that to you. It blends much better. And I think you find yourself all sort of influenced to do all sorts of different things of that nature. And you'll be amazed by what you achieve. I think the problem is with the workshops as well. When we used to get them a set of oil paints, they could take them away after and use them, and they'd have the right sort of brushes they needed to do the work, which is fine. I think we used to be able to get them for about £5 or £6 a little set before that, and obviously we used to have to ask for the payment for those alongside the workshop that we would be taking you in. But just go for it yourself. Remember old Henry Cooper, splash it on all over. And if you do feel that you want to use, to start with more perhaps reasonable cost paints, you can get pots of acrylic paint, and you can use that as well. They don't blend as well as oil, in my opinion. They don't blend so well. Um, oh, pardon me, forgive me, sir. But what I would also used to teach people as well, to get some linseed oil, raw linseed oil, or even better, boiled linseed oil. And it goes for ages and ages, a bottle about an half pint size, would last you forever really. But what you can do with that on your canvas or your card is mix a bit of the white paint, the white oil, or if you're going to use some acrylic, mix that in, keep it fairly the colour dominant, and a tiny little bit of boiled linseed oil is the best. And then get something like a 2-inch brush and just paint all over your canvas up and down. That would be your starting point. And then you just go in and get stuck into it. As I say, we used to get a little painting kit, and some people would like to get their own. I think we got quite a good price on that really, because we could probably buy 20, 30 sets, and then let you have them for what we've paid for them. But you can get very cheap sets of oil paints today. Don't buy the very cheap ones. You see those tiny little tubes, I've seen sets on markets and they're about £3 or something. I would avoid them really. Get something with a little bit more quality, and the same with acrylics as well. But having said that, it works very well. Another very good option is poster paints. And if you go into the art shops, or even a lot of the supermarkets, the £1 shops or the £2 shops as they are today, they'll have pots of poster paint, and that can be very good. But keep the blending in mind with your work. And as I say, if you want to have a proper go at it, try and get some oils. We are thinking, it's not in place again yet, but we are thinking now. I'm starting to get back to doing some things with my work, and that's what Spiritual Times with Philip Solomon is all about, getting you interested in things. And if we could start doing some workshops up and down the country, we'd be able to teach you to do that. But look for all other things that inspire you. If you think it might be nice to work with a different sort of materials. I know a gentleman who he gets potatoes, cuts them in half, potatoes, and makes sort of shapes in them, different spikes in them, sort of works them out of it, if you like. And then with poster paint, he fills it up, and that goes onto his board, and he makes all sorts of very interesting patterns. And yeah, it's whatever you think inspires you. But if you can sort of think of it as, getting yourself in the right frame of mind, the right sort of way for you doing this with, that would be very beneficial. As I say, you might like to have a look into that melting wax. I found it very interesting, and as I say, my friend Sheila Dougal up in Scotland, she does all sorts of workshops with using just that. And apparently they see all sorts of shapes as the waxes fall and come together. And they absolutely believe that it's coming from an higher level of existence, and that it has meaning for them. Yeah, I think that would be very interesting. I remember when I interviewed Sheila, I found it fascinating. And she does emphasise you can do it. I think they're very expensive, the wax, the proper wax painting materials. I think they're quite expensive. But treat yourself if you have a birthday coming up or something like that. Get yourself some of these wax. I suppose like wax candles. Perhaps you could probably melt all those sort of things. But she did say that you could do it with crayons as well. One thing I would emphasise: be really, really careful if you're using any sort of hot materials. Be very, very careful that you don't find yourself get yourself burnt by them or set something on fire. I'm going to emphasise here and now, don't blame me. I'm absolutely warning you here and now to take all precautions. And I don't think that probably would be a starting point for psychic art. To me, your psychic art would be to come along to a workshop with me or another person who teaches those sort of things and just pick up, see that you've got that ability to produce things. You're going to say, I can't draw, I can't paint. You can. You can. And it's not painting something that looks absolutely amazing. Some of the have a look at op art or something like that, the various forms of modern art that you see today. Go and visit your local art gallery and go and look at them, and you'll see, for when you first look, you'll see all sorts of things of colours and patterns, things all mixed up, And you think, oh, well, that's strange, isn't it? I remember once somebody saying to me, a monkey could paint that. And I had to bite my tongue a little bit, but yeah, everyone's entitled their opinion. Maybe the monkey was concentrating on psychic art. I don't know. I jest, of course. But you'll see, once you get that inspiration to just go with what you feel, let the brush be an extension of your psychic work, your psychic painting, your psychic art, and you will be amazed what you can achieve. At a later date, we'll try and do a little a few workshops, and maybe you'd like to come along and enjoy taking one. I don't believe in those workshops that cost hundreds and hundreds of pounds. There's no need for it, really. Um, I suppose with your art materials, it might be better to let your teacher, me or whoever you might take that sort of training with, to get the materials for you, because they'll have a good idea that what works well, and then you can just concentrate on what inspires you to get down on paper. And if you do something, be proud of it and show it people. And if they say, well, what is it, uh, well, that's their unappreciation of your art and art generally. I'm telling you here on Spiritual Times, it's a great thing to look into, and you can do it. So I tell you what, I'll see you in another week's time, and we'll chat about another subject that fits in nicely with Spiritual Times. And I'm quite sure that you'll be able to start off and have a go at these things. So I say good night and God bless, and I'll see you again in a week's time.